This is Let Your Voice Be Heard, right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard, guys. Thank you.
Don't gas him.
No one's gassing me. It's just
his
facts.
ego is big enough.
Facts on facts on facts.
Good morning.
You're just mad because we went to brunch yesterday.
I am.
Without you.
I am very mad.
We went to brunch without Stanley last week, so.
Yeah, but did you drink alcohol?
No.
Then you didn't have brunch.
True, because we drank.
Well, I can't drink regardless. So.
Yes, we know you get drunk off of rubbing alcohol, Selena. We know that. Guys, we're back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem.
Yes.
Harlem's got a radio station.
Okay, Stanley's being creepy. Welcome back, guys. It's been one whole week since we've been here at WHCR, and we missed you very much. We hope that you have missed us as well, and happy to hear us because we're happy to be here.
No one misses you, Selena.
I'm pretty sure they do.
I highly doubt it.
Well,
did you guys miss me? Because I was gone last week.
Stanley wasn't here last week, and we had a blast.
You popping your collar over there?
I'm actually fixing my collar because it feels weird right now. I was in Albany for a conference on social justice, and I got to meet one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, and she is amazing. She had the whole audience in tears at the end of her remarks, and it was pretty awesome. And I have lots of videos that I forgot to post on my fan page, but I will, and I shall as soon as possible. So guys, Selena is a boss, so I will shut up and let her talk.
Right, so let's just start with formal introductions. My name is Selena Hill, and on Instagram and Twitter, it's Miss Selena Hill, and I spell Miss with an M-S.
Because she's not married, right?
No, a lot of people keep spelling it M-I-S-S, and and they'll tag me M-I-S-S, and I'm like, oh no, but it's all good. Mm-hmm. It's all good. You guys know now.
I don't know.
No, well, keep forgetting. And my name is Alyssa Fuchs. You can find me on Facebook or on Twitter using facebook.com/Alyssa Fuchs or just at Alyssa Fuchs on Twitter, which is spelt with an I. Or you can go to the fan page, which is probably easier to remember. It's Politically Preposterous. We're on Twitter, and we are on Facebook.
Definitely.
And my name is Stanley Fritz, and you can find me on Twitter at Stan Fritz, where I talk all sorts of nonsense. And, of course, you can follow me on Instagram at DarkSkinSwindle if I approve your follow request, but I probably will not because I don't think that I know you if you're following me out of nowhere with no pre-warning. And if you really want to get to know me, you can add me on Facebook. My name is Selena Hill.
Right. Okay, so welcome back, guys. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard. And, of course, you can always follow us on Instagram and Twitter at BeHeard_radio. We have a great show lined up today.
How do you know that for sure?
Because we're starting off talking about World War III.
What?
No, I'm just kidding, guys.
In cyberspace.
I know, right? Well, yeah, World War III in cyberspace. Well, that's probably a bad analogy. But I don't know if you guys are aware, but the U.S. experienced one of the largest, if not the largest, cyber attacks to our government. 4 million current and former government employees experienced a breach in security, and a lot of their information has been exposed by these hackers.
Before that, there was also another hack, which was this different group, presumably, that attacked the IRS, and that they got information on Americans who had filed their data with the IRS. So it's pretty scary.
It is scary
because it's not like regular warfare. It's about information.
Yeah,
and we thought the NSA was scary. Look at China. Look at these hackers.
Well, China's been doing this for quite some time now, so I'm not surprised. I'm not saying that I'm okay with it, but yeah,
And we do it too.
I mean, it's just getting bigger and more massive. I mean, they're just, the equipment and the technology is evolving, and so are they.
Listen, China wants to hack into my personal files and liquidate or erase my student loan debt. I'm totally okay with that. Navi in China, they are challenging you as a superpower.
I doubt they're going to do that for your benefit, Stanley. Speaking of benefits, we're also going to talk about a benefit that was supposed to happen with Haiti. So I'll just start from the beginning. There's been this huge article that's viral that ProPublica and NPR published about how the Red Cross received about $500 million in donations to go towards the Haiti Relief Fund after the earthquake in 2010. And then, Justin Elliott, and a reporter from NPR, wrote this article saying, with that $500 million, they only built 6 permanent homes in Haiti. And so where did the rest of the money go? Who's holding them accountable, and what happened? And it's a scathing and damning report on ProPublica's website, and we have the reporter who actually did the research, went to Haiti, and then wrote this article, this scathing article. We have him on the show here. Let your voice be heard. We also will have another guest calling in named Dan Beaton, who's also been covering and following what's going on with the Red Cross. So I'm very excited to talk about that later on in the show.
Yeah, Red Cross has had some problems for quite some time, and we're talking about, the nonsense they've done in Haiti, but then they lost a lot of credibility in the States after Hurricane Sandy, where they couldn't even do proper damage control work in America, in New York, where they were telling people they were dropping off food in Far Rockaway, but what they were doing was actually leaving crates of food at the beach, and the food would just get washed away. And that's why Occupy Sandy, where they actually had people on the ground doing things, ended up being the go-to organization for Sandy relief because the Red Cross dropped the ball so badly.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in depth. We're also going to talk about Caitlyn, which I'm very, very excited about.
Why'd you get out of breath that way?
I know. Maybe I shouldn't be so excited to talk about Caitlyn Jenner. I mean, it's pretty old news, but I mean, everybody isn't talking about that. So we'll save that juicy news for the news roundup. Stanley's being creepy.
That was you just now.
That's Stanley. And then Alyssa, last but not least, we'll be talking about Abercrombie and Fitch's loss at the Supreme Court,
which, as Scalia called it, this is an easy case. I mean, here's the deal. Religious freedom applies to all religions. It doesn't just apply to Christianity. So when you are talking about a case that invokes the First Amendment through the application of the Civil Rights Law of 1964, which I'm going to get into more detail about later on this afternoon, then it applies to Christianity, to Judaism, to Islam. I mean, it applies across the board to all religions. The First Amendment doesn't just apply to Christianity. Doesn't just apply to Judaism.
It doesn't?
No, it applies to any and all religions.
But those are the only religions that matter, isn't it? Aren't they?
Well, to some people, yes, but in reality, the reality of it is if you are part of a religious group, whether it's a major religious group or a minor religious group or a religious group that other people don't particularly like or isn't theirs, you still have the protections of religious freedom.
Aw, thank you, base God.
Okay, so we'll get into that and so much more. And of course, we want to hear from you. And you can let your voice be heard by either calling us up at 212-650-6903. Or you can tweet us at
BeHeard_radio.
Or leave a comment on
I don't know, Selena, you tell
Politically Preposterous.
Maybe I will.
On Facebook. So we'll be right back. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard.
We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard, and Selena loves sausage.
No, I love this Little Mama Sausage song. I made a video to it. No. I actually made a video on Instagram, and Little Mama commented.
To sausage?
No, she left me a comment.
You made a video
on Instagram. The song is called Sausage. And she talks about eggs, bacon, ham, sausage. I don't know. It's really fun.
That's not really what she's talking about, right?
In some parts.
You like sausage, huh, Selena?
I like that song. I really do. Okay, you're being...
You know what this reminds me of? With things that we can't really say, but, we'll skirt around them. The Chris Rock skit where he's talking about how girls like to listen to different songs, and then they'll be like, I don't like this song, and it's dirty, but then they'll go to the club, and they'll be dancing to the song, and they'll be singing the lyrics. And
he ain't talking about me.
But that's definitely not a dirty song.
What, sausage?
It's not.
Isn't it?
I mean, in the video, she has the kids dancing around
Just
her.
because you have kids dancing around you doesn't mean you're not talking about sausage.
I first of all, we're talking about breakfast sausage.
No, she's not talking about breakfast sausage. Well, it can be breakfast sausage.
It can.
But
wow. Okay, now on that note, we're back on Let Your Voice Be Heard right here on WHCR
90.3 FM.
The Voice of Harlem. And my name is Selena Hale. I'm here with Stanley Sausage Fritz and
nope,
Alyssa
that's not what my name is.
And Alyssa Fuchs.
Stanley Big Sausage.
Oh,
Chris.
All right, now we hope we'll be back next Sunday.
We will.
So on a more serious note, let's talk about the cyber hacks and what's been going on.
Cyber hacks 2015.
Thank you for that.
We can't afford to make sound effects, so I'm just doing it on my own.
And I appreciate that. Okay, so on Thursday, the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, as I will reference them, revealed that hackers compromised personal data on 4 million current or former government employees. in what was the largest cyber attack in U.S. history. So according to OPM, the breach included records on 750,000 Department of Defense civilian personnel. It also included information about people's names, addresses, family members, education, social security numbers, security clearances, and medical records. I'm like, they just dug up every and anything that they could find.
Damn.
So experts warn that more than likely this data will be used for either financial fraud or espionage. We'll find out which one. And
That's not nice.
and what?
He's like, or espionage. We'll find out.
Right.
People we're
Pretty
talking
serious.
Yeah, it is. Hold
No,
on.
espionage is pretty serious.
about.
Yeah, it is very serious. And I'm sorry if I did not convey that in the way I said it. Moving on. So the White House said, we believe that Chinese hackers are behind this. The government may or may not be behind it. I mean, the Chinese government, but we know that they have traced it back to China, according to what I've been reading. Now, the White House also used this as an open window and an opportune time to continue to push legislation that would prevent cybersecurity threats in wake of the recent massive federal data breach. So President Obama has been pushing this for months now, but of course the Republican-controlled Congress stalled it. So they've been saying, you know what, Congress, it's time to wake out of the dark ages and pass some legislation that could prevent a breach like this from happening in the future. So with that said, the OPM, and it also raised a number of questions. Analysts have been asking, so, number one, why did OPM actually wait till June 4th to disclose this attack? It happened. It's been going on for a while now. They discovered the data in April, and they didn't decide to release it to the public up until June 4th. So that's one thing. But OPM says that, when we have an attack of this magnitude, we have to make sure that there's due diligence. We go through due diligence and a certain process before we can expose it to the public. I mean, or it could have just been, they were like, look, Caitlyn Jenner's dropping her story this week. We know she's going to get all the publicity. Maybe we should wait till this week. Or probably not. But that's when they decided
I don't think they thought about that.
We'll find out exactly why did they wait till June 4th, so long afterward. So, and it also raises the question of, is this still happening? Is this still going on?
Yeah.
Are they currently hacking into our system right now?
They're hacking into your Snapchat right now, Selena.
I don't even have Snapchat.
Yes, you do. You
I
just didn't know you
actually
did.
think it's more along the lines of they want to get into the government systems versus our individual
definitely.
messages. I mean, that's the NSA. The NSA clearly wants to get into our individual messages. If you want to know more about that, you should listen to last week's show because we talked a lot about that last week. And then after we got off the air, the Patriot Act died, as I expected. And
Shout
the
out to Rand Paul.
And the Freedom Act eventually was passed. But, that was last week's show. Where my point is, I think with respect to foreign governments, they want to get into our government systems because that's where they can get the most leverage. That's where they can get the most information. They're not going to get it from your Snapchat. They're going to get it from the IRS to get your financial data, your social security number, things that they can actually use to commit large-scale fraud or to make your life miserable or the lives of government officials miserable. And ultimately, I think they want to get into the grid to be able to shut down the electricity, mess up the water flow, and to have that kind of catastrophic events. I think that's like their ultimate goal is to try and break into the grid.
Sounds like they want to declare cyber war. We have a very special guest on the line who will help us continue this conversation and answer some very important questions. His name is Alex McGeorge. He is the head of threat intelligence at Immunity Inc. He is also a white hat hacker, and he tests major networks for the type of attacks that we just saw happen. What happened, Stanley?
Because usually he's also a white. So I'm like, Selena, why is that important? I thought you were going to say white person. I'm like, why?
No. White hat hacker. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy to have you here. We had a brief little discussion about what's been going on, but I wanted to start the conversation by asking, why was this cyber attack so big? Why was this such a big deal, actually? I mean, as Alyssa mentioned, this is not the first time the U.S. has been attacked this year. It's actually been about 3 other major attacks. But what makes this one stand out?
Okay, so a few things to sort of talk about. With regards to like this being like the largest breach, by the numbers, it actually isn't. You're talking like any of the major credit card processors or like the Target breach. That was more along the lines of tens of millions of people. What makes this significant, I think, is that it's government employees, and it was so much data rather than just their credit card numbers and financial information, right? So you're looking at who had a clearance, a lot of the information that was related to their clearance. So, for example, like when you go to get interviewed for, like, let's say you want to get a top secret clearance, right? Man, they're talking to, everyone your neighbors, et cetera, to try to figure out what's going on. And one of the things that, they tell you is be upfront about what you think your dirt is, because we're going to find it. And if you lie to us, then that's a bad thing. So, people will say, oh, there's, this one time I smoked pot in college and whatever, and this, that, and the other. Or, like, maybe, it used to be that you could say, like, you come out to your clearance officer as gay, but not necessarily your family. So it's significant in that regard. With regards to why it's going on or why it's happening, I think you guys are pretty much right on the money in that this is going to be, leverage for espionage going forward with China. I would be less worried about financial fraud in this instance because, whatever's in, like, my savings account, for example, does not even, merit a mention compared to the Chinese GDP. But I think you're also right, and you had another angle on it, is maybe I'm not actually worried about, extracting money from you, but I'm worried about making your life more difficult so you are less effective as an employee. If you're worried that, your savings disappeared, chances are you're not going to be as good at your job as if you weren't. So, yeah, I think you guys are pretty close, and you're right on the money with what the motivation here might be.
Okay, guys, if you're listening and you want to call in, the number is 212-650-6903. You can also tweet us at BeHeard_radio. Right. So, Alex, how exactly were the hackers able to break into virtually every government agency and then get away with it for so long?
Well, okay, so, the issue is the government is, built on this incredibly dense red tape bureaucracy, right? You've got these systems that have been around since really almost the advent of modern computing. I've definitely been on gigs where I'll find stuff that was originally turned on in the 70s. So part of it is you've got an issue of scale, and you still really don't have a centralized way to monitor everything coming and going and happening on government networks. They still kind of break it down at the agency level. So, the fact that it has happened is not at all surprising. The fact that it went so long without being detected also isn't that surprising. And if you look, the Federal Register wrote a piece about, the stuff that they're going to be, it's the stuff that OPM is going to do, or DHS actually is going to do in response to this. And one of the things that they mentioned was we're going to take a look at traffic leaving the network to see if we can find, instances of something that looks wrong. We call that egress filtering. And it's sort of a step that you would see on modern financial networks or, in the private sector more readily. And the government has been a little slow to uptake because, one, it's expensive, and two, it's actually very complicated. And three, one of the things that we've seen is that, if you have significant tenure in the government, you can typically, skirt rules in order to get, your particular product or what have you, or project, I should say, special treatment. We saw this with the Hillary Clinton email, right? Whatever side of the issue that you fall on, it's fine. But because she was Secretary of State, she could just say, I'm not going to use the State Department email. I'm going to have my own thing, right?
Right.
And, because I'm Secretary of State, you guys are just going to deal with it. And that's pretty common in government, to have folks with that kind of power. And as a result, that doesn't really lead towards good security decisions.
Right, right. One of the things that you mentioned, Alex, was the scale of this breach. And that leaves me to question, what is the real value? I mean, we've talked about on this show how the NSA was collecting so much phone data that they're overwhelmed and overloaded with all of this data. And what's the value in that if you can't, stop the Boston Marathon bombing and you're collecting so much data? It's like, how can you really pick up or tell when someone or something might be in jeopardy? So what is, after they hacked into 4 million government employees' information, like what do they plan to do with it, or is this just step one?
Make fake MySpace pages.
I doubt that.
So I think what the plan is, like if you said to me, Alex, you're going to do this to China, what's the reverse it? What's your game plan? I think that the basic thing is I want to have a real good, very complete idea of who works for the federal government, so that I can identify people to either blackmail, maybe, or bribe, or another thing would be I want to have all their personal information. So, like, if you've ever had to reset, a password for your job, right? Like, if you work at a large organization and your password expires, you get locked out or whatever, you got to call the help desk. Right? What's the stuff they ask you for? It's the stuff that's going to be in your employee record, like the last 4 of your social, your birth date, same sort of thing your bank asks you to prove that you're you. So now that I have this like giant, really complete database, you can share this across different parts of. Let's just go with the assumption that this was China. I think it's probably likely, but they haven't released enough evidence to really, completely convince me, but let's go ahead and say it's true.
Hold on, you sound suspicious. Who do you think it is?
Well, another thing that's interesting is things work a little bit differently in China than they do here. So, for example, like in the U.S., like if I were, just as me as a private citizen, if I were to go and try to hack the Chinese government in some way, right, some whatever part of it, that would actually technically be a crime in the United States. Now, whether or not they would extradite me to China or prosecute me is a different story. But in China, it's not, right? So what you see is, you can have private groups that are contracted out by Chinese military or Chinese intelligence in order to, execute this sort of thing on their behalf. And then it gives them a little layer of plausible deniability, saying, well, it was one of our citizens maybe, but it wasn't us, as the Chinese government. So, and honestly, what we've heard is, basically the FBI saying, okay, it was China, or, the government saying it was China, but they haven't really said this is why we think it is China. They said we've traced it back to China, and attribution is actually pretty difficult in most cases when you're dealing with breaches like this. Seeing what evidence that they have and how they're drawing that conclusion would go a long way. But again, I don't necessarily think that it's not China. I just, you always try to retain a healthy level of skepticism, I think.
Right. So, Alex, actually, we do need to take a quick break, but we do thank you for that. Stay on the line with us. We will continue the conversation about the cyber attack, which has been attributed to China. Of course, like Alex just said, we don't know why, but we'll see if we can figure it out right after this break.
I thought I told you that we won't